Welcome back to Crime Podcast, everyone, and welcome to episode 35 of our Unsolved Mystery Series. Today, we're diving deep into a case that'll send chills down your spine.
Oh, yeah.
The Ghost Murders of Sundarpur.
Okay.
Back in 2015, this peaceful village in Uttar Pradesh, India, was gripped by terror.
Right.
A string of brutal murders left the villagers convinced that a sinister force was at play, something beyond human comprehension.
Yeah. You know what immediately struck me about this case is how the very fabric of the village, its traditions, its folklore, became intertwined with the investigation.
Right.
It wasn't just a matter of solving a crime.
Yeah.
It was about navigating a community grappling with fear and ancient beliefs.
Right from the start, it sounds like we're dealing with a mystery that's as much psychological as it is physical.
Absolutely.
So before we get into the heart of the murders, paint a picture for us.
Sure.
What was Sundarpur like before this darkness descended?
Well, imagine a small, close-knit village where life moved at a slower pace.
Okay.
Generations of families had lived there, tied to the land.
Working as farmers and local tradespeople,
Right.
there was a strong sense of community, a reliance on tradition and shared beliefs.
I see.
It was a place where stories and folklore weren't just entertainment.
Yeah.
They were woven into the very fabric of their lives.
Okay, so we have this picture of a peaceful, almost idyllic village.
Right.
Then summer of 2015 arrives and everything changes.
Okay.
The first death in June.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So the first victim was a young man
Okay.
found dead on the outskirts of the village. What made this death so unsettling weren't just the circumstances,
Right.
but the inexplicable marks found on his body.
Hold on. You're really piquing my curiosity here.
Okay.
What kind of marks are we talking about? The podcast didn't go into too much detail.
That's part of what fueled the mystery.
Right.
Some described the marks as burns,
Okay.
while others thought they resembled claw marks. The medical examiners couldn't pinpoint a cause of death,
Oh, wow.
which only deepened the sense of unease. So right off the bat, we have this element of the unknown, this ambiguity surrounding the cause of death.
Yes.
I can only imagine how that would impacted the villagers,
Yeah.
especially in a place where folklore is so deeply ingrained.
Absolutely. This first death was like a crack in the foundation of their reality.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the familiar became unsettling, and whispers of a supernatural force began to circulate.
And then it wasn't just a single death, right?
No.
The podcast mentioned a series of murders.
Yes.
Did they follow a similar pattern?
Over the next few months, several more bodies were discovered, both men and women.
Okay.
They were always found in isolated areas with no signs of a struggle, as if they were ambushed. And each body bore those same inexplicable marks, adding fuel to the fire of fear and speculation.
It sounds like a classic horror movie setup.
It does, doesn't it?
Isolated village, strange deaths, no clear explanation.
Yeah.
I can see why the supernatural theories started to take hold.
Right.
But before we dive into those,
Okay.
were there any common threads between the victims? Anything that could help the police establish a motive?
That's the thing. There didn't seem to be any connection between the victims.
Right.
Their ages, professions, social circles, none of it lined up.
Wow.
It was as if the killer was choosing victims at random, making it even harder for the police to establish a pattern or motive.
So we have a lack of motive,
Yes.
a lack of connection between victims, and these bizarre, unexplainable marks.
Right.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
It really is.
No wonder the villagers started to look beyond the rationale towards the realm of the supernatural.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
In the absence of a logical explanation, the human mind seeks answers elsewhere.
Right.
And in Sundarpur, those answers were found in their folklore.
Okay.
Specifically in the chilling legend of the Churail. The Churail, for those unfamiliar, is a figure deeply embedded in Indian folklore.
Okay.
She's often depicted as a vengeful female spirit seeking retribution against those who have wronged her in life.
It's interesting you bring up the Churail. I remember reading that vengeful female spirits are a recurring theme in folklore around the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Is there something about that archetype that resonates so deeply with us, do you think?
That's a great question. The Churail and figures like her in other cultures often embody societal anxieties about female power, about women who transgress social norms.
Right.
Their stories serve as cautionary tales, but also tap into a primal fear of the unknown, of forces beyond our control.
And in Sundarpur, this fear wasn't just a theoretical concept.
Right.
It was becoming all too real.
Yeah.
The podcast mentioned that whispers of the churel quickly became the dominant explanation for the murders.
Uh-huh.
How did that manifest within the village?
Well, the villagers began to connect the dots in a way that felt terrifyingly logical to them.
Right.
The unexplainable marks, the lack of motive, the random nature of the killings,
Yeah.
it all pointed to a supernatural force.
Right.
And remember, these were people for whom folklore wasn't just stories. It was a way of life, a lens through which they understood the world.
So if the villagers believed the churel was responsible, what did they do? Did they just succumb to fear, or did they try to fight back?
Well,
And what about the police?
yeah.
How did they navigate this clash between the rational and the supernatural?
The villagers faced with this terror turned to what they knew.
Okay.
They began performing rituals, hanging protective charms, holding prayer vigils.
Wow.
Anything to appease the vengeful spirit they believed was stalking them.
It's like right out of a movie.
Yeah.
As for the police, they were caught in a difficult position.
Oh.
Right.
On one hand, they were trained to investigate, to seek evidence, to find a human culprit. But on the other hand, they were dealing with a community deeply entrenched in fear and belief.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for the police.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces keep shifting.
Right.
Where logic and evidence are constantly bumping up against the intangible, the realm of faith and folklore.
Exactly. The podcast really highlighted that tension.
Yeah.
The police were trying to find a rational explanation, a motive, a suspect.
Right.
But the villagers, convinced it was their churel, were hesitant to cooperate. They feared angering the spirit, making things worse.
So we have these parallel investigations happening.
Yeah.
The police are trying to apply their methods while the villagers are turning to their own traditions and beliefs.
Right.
But did anyone consider alternative explanations, theories that didn't involve the supernatural?
Of course, there were those who remained skeptical of the supernatural.
Okay.
Some suggested it could be a serial killer.
Oh.
Someone using unconventional weapons or techniques that left those unusual marks.
That's a valid point. A serial killer could explain the seemingly random nature of the killings. But how do you reconcile that with the lack of motive?
Right.
Why target this small, isolated village?
Yeah.
And what about those strange marks? It's a theory that raises as many questions as it answers, doesn't it?
It does, and that's what makes this case so fascinating.
Yeah.
Each theory, each possible explanation has its flaws, its contradictions,
Right.
and the lack of a definitive answer only amplifies the mystery.
So alongside the serial killer theory, what other possibilities were put forward?
Well, there was also the theory of ritualistic killings.
Okay.
Some villagers believed that the murders were a way of invoking powerful spirits or perhaps appeasing some malevolent entity. This theory tapped into existing fears about dark forces at play, and it gained traction among those already inclined to believe in the supernatural.
That's a chilling thought. Did the investigators find any evidence to support the ritualistic killing theory? Were there any signs of cult activity in the area?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
There were no symbols, artifacts, or any indication of a group operating in the shadows.
Huh.
It remained a theory fueled by fear and speculation, but lacking concrete evidence.
Then there was the theory of mass hysteria, right? The idea that maybe these deaths weren't murders at all, but accidents or natural causes that were misinterpreted due to the heightened fear and superstition in the village.
That's an interesting angle, and it speaks to how collective fear can distort perceptions and lead to unfounded conclusions.
Right.
However, as you mentioned earlier, the severity of those injuries, those strange markings,
Yeah.
they're hard to explain away as simple accidents.
It seems like we keep hitting a wall.
We do.
Every theory we explore, every potential explanation has its limitations, its inconsistencies. And yet we have this string of gruesome deaths that demand an explanation.
That's the crux of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have this need to understand to make sense of the senseless.
Right.
But sometimes the answers remain elusive and we're left to grapple with the unknown.
So we're left with this unsettling truth. Despite all our theorizing, the ghost murders of Sundarpur remain unsolved.
Yeah.
What happened in that village back in 2015 continues to haunt not just the residents,
Right.
but anyone who delves into this case. It makes you wonder, what lasting impact does something like this have on a community?
Well, the impact of such an event is multifaceted.
Okay.
On a practical level, the podcast mentioned that many villagers chose to leave Sundarpur unable to escape the shadow of fear that had fallen over their home.
Right.
Those who remained continued to live with a heightened sense of anxiety, clinging to rituals and charms for protection. Imagine living in a place where every shadow could be a threat, where the line between reality and folklore has become blurred.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a crime that was investigated and then forgotten.
Right.
The ghost murders fundamentally changed the way people lived, the way they perceived their world.
Absolutely.
It's almost as if the village itself became a character in this story, a living testament to the power of fear and belief.
Precisely. And that's one of the most compelling aspects of this case.
Yeah.
The way it highlights the enduring power of narratives, especially in the face of the unknown. When we can't explain something logically, we turn to stories, to myths, to make sense of it. In Sundarpur, the legend of the Churail provided a framework for understanding the unexplainable, even if it came at the cost of perpetuating fear.
But this isn't just about Sundarpur, is it?
No.
It feels like a story that speaks to something universal, something that resonates with all of us.
Right.
We all grapple with uncertainty, with the fear of the unknown. And sometimes the stories we tell ourselves can be more powerful, more frightening than any objective reality.
You've hit on a crucial point. The ghost murders serve as a chilling reminder of the power of belief.
Yeah.
And how that belief can shape our perceptions, our actions, even our realities.
Wow.
Whether or not you believe in the supernatural, this case forces you to confront the limits of human understanding, the possibility that there are things in this world that defy explanation.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a sense of unease,
Yeah.
but also a renewed appreciation for the power of stories.
For sure.
Stories can comfort us, terrify us, and even define us. And sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that leave us with more questions than answers.
I couldn't agree more. The Ghost Murders of Sundarpur, while a chilling tale, ultimately offer a reflection on the human condition itself.
Right.
Our need to understand our capacity for fear and the enduring power of belief.
Yeah.
It's a case that stays with you long after you've heard the details, prompting you to consider what you believe and why.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Sundarpur's chilling mystery. If this case has piqued your interest in unsolved mysteries, we encourage you to explore the CrimePod Castle archives. We have a wealth of fascinating cases waiting to be uncovered. And if you'd like to stay up to date on our latest deep dives, be sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and always keep an open mind.